Hello again everyone, I'm Terry Peterman, the Internet Electrician, and welcome to another one of my video shorts on current topics at electrical-online.com and of course right here on YouTube. In today's project video, I'm going to wire and install some more under-cabinet lighting in my under-cabinet lighting series of videos. For this project, we're going to use a product from Getinlight. Now this is called their Pro Under-Cabinet Light Fixture. It comes in various sizes. We're going to use two 24-inch strips today and two 18-inch strips. We're going to put the 18s behind me here on either side of the range, and then there's a cabinet piece here that'll make room for the 24-inch strip. Now these light fixtures, they come with an on-off switch. You can hardwire them, or you can use the plug-ins that are provided with them and use them as plug-in fixtures. But we're going to use them as a hardwired assembly and a hardwired installation. I'm going to take my power from this switch right here on the wall behind me. Inside that switch we've got power in and then power out to the rest of the lights in the kitchen here, and we've only got about 7 outlets on that circuit, so it's a 20 amp circuit. We've got plenty of room to add these 4 new fixtures. So we're going to be using 12 gauge wire because it's fed with a 20 amp circuit. We'll put a new work box, or I should say an old work box, in the wall here, cut that in, take our power from that switch, and then we're going to sneak it through the wall and drill out to the back of the fixture. And then I'm going to use wire mold from Legrand. It's got all kinds of accessories for outside corners, inside corners, but it's got this wire way to protect the Romex that we're going to be using for this project. Now, why do you have to do that? Well, anywhere that Romex is run, it has to be either concealed in the walls or in the building structure, but it can't be run on the surface, and especially if there's any chance of mechanical damage. Well, there's really not a whole lot of chance of getting anything damaged when it's stapled up or somehow fastened up underneath the cabinets. However, we're going to make the inspectors happy, and we're going to protect it with this wire mold wireway channel. So I'll show you how to do all that. Of course, as always, safety is paramount, so we're going to shut off the power to this circuit before we get started, especially when we tie into that wiring. Also, make sure that you got your permits in place. If your jurisdiction allows homeowner electrical permits, check with your municipal building authority to see if that's allowed for you to do it yourself. Otherwise, hire a professional electrician to get this done. But on a scale of 1 to 10, the difficulty of this is probably somewhere around a 7 or 8 of most of the projects that I tackle here at Electrical Online. So let's get started. So here's a close-up of the box that these fixtures come in from Getinlight, as I mentioned. The 18-inch LED under-cabinet fixture. It's got a swivel design, so you can adjust your angle of light once it's mounted under the cabinet. As you can see, that moves up and down. So you can adjust that, which we'll do for the best efficient lighting that we can come up with underneath the cabinets here. We've got a 3-position switch, off, dim, and the bright setting. And these are also unique in that they have 3 color temperatures. So you've got 3 temperature settings you can set by using this switch here. You can go with 2700 Kelvin, 3000 Kelvin, or 4000 Kelvin. So that's in your RGB spectrum of LED lighting. So these are very versatile fixtures, and as I mentioned, cord connector, hardwire. So let's get at the installation here. I'm going to check for power here, make sure I've got the proper breaker off, and then we're going to cut this box into the wall beside that switch on the stud cavity side of the switch box so that we don't have any studs to go through. So we're going to carefully cut the hole for this and fish a wire over to the existing switch box and get going from there on to wiring the light fixtures. So we'll go step by step here. All right, so the first step here is to get this box cut into the wall space. I know I've got a 16-inch stud space to work with. The stud for this box is on this side, so I can put this box anywhere in here that's going to be convenient for a switch for the under-cabinet lighting. So what we're going to do, this is called a old work box, and inside the wall that's a new work box. This old work box, you can cut a hole to the right size. You have to make sure it's exact to fit this box, and then when you slip it into the hole that you've cut in the sheetrock, these here tabs will flip out, and as you tighten the screw, they'll clamp themselves into the drywall. So the hole that you cut has to be pretty exact. So we're going to say it's around 3.5 by 2 3/8 is the hole we need to cut. So I'm going to measure over and I'm going to level, because you want to make sure that these are at the same height, because if you ever put some tile on here, it'll become very noticeable if your boxes aren't lined up exactly at the same height. So what I'll do, like I said, measure over, level it, cut my proper size hole, and install that box. So I've marked it in with the pencil. It's about 3 5/8 by 2 1/4. Now I'm going to proceed to cut that hole out of the drywall. Okay, so I've got my hole cut here. Now we're just going to test fit the box into place. Fits nice. So before we put it into place, now's the time to fish our wire over to the other box. I'm going to just make a nice loop in my wire, push it up, and fish it back into the hole in the top left corner of this box. So I can actually feel the other box there. It shouldn't be too hard to do. I fully expected to find some vapor barrier behind this drywall before the insulation. Some builders do, some builders don't. All builders should have a vapor barrier here. But nothing I can do about that without tearing the whole wall off to remedy that. All the walls in the house for that matter. So anyways, that's beside the point. We'll fish that wire over. I just used a multi-tool, a cordless multi-tool reciprocating tool to cut this hole. You can use anything. You can use a Sawzall, reciprocating saw, just a keyhole saw, or even a utility knife. But just be careful. Make a nice neat job of cutting that hole. All right, so I've got my wire in, fished over through the clamp to the existing box. Now I'm going to strip these, put to the right length, put it into the box, and then clamp my box in place, as well as this side, strip it, shove it back up through the clamp till it's about the right length, and then we'll make our splices. All right, so I got just a little ahead of myself because now we need to get the switch leg up to the underside of the cabinet here, and I'm going to show you a close-up of where I'm drilling this hole in through the back of the cabinet as high as I can, and then we'll fish a wire from it down to here. Like I said, I'll show you a close-up of where that hole's going in when I've got that wire in place. All right, so I've fished in. See, I drilled a nice little 5/8 hole right through the back of this, I guess it'd be the back valance, the underside of the cabinet, and just fished it down to the open hole for the switch. That'll be our switch leg up to the, I'm going to install here a wire mold box. So that wire is going to go directly into the side of this box. And then from there, I'm going to go from the box into the fixture as tight as I can, and then carry on from the end of this box with wire mold just to protect our NMD as we head over to the other fixture, the 18-inch. But let's make these splices up. While I'm here, I noticed something, and I want to show you that I found in the existing switch box. This is what happens when the drywallers aren't careful when they cut the holes in the drywall. Sometimes they'll just put the drywall on, give it a wrap, and when they see where the box is, then they'll use their Sawzall or a keyhole saw and cut around the inside of the box and slide the drywall in place. Well, look at here, if you can see that. I'm going to give you a nice close-up. When they did that, you can see there's a nick in the neutral conductors in the insulation from that keyhole saw or even a reciprocating saw, whatever they use to cut that hole. Now, it's on the neutral, and you know, if those conductors weren't nicked, you can see the brightly colored copper there. So you know that that copper wire has been compromised. If it wasn't, I would be tempted just to tape that up good and be okay with it, but it is compromised, and once you bend that back and forth a couple times, that wire could break off. So what I'm going to do when I make this splice, I'll back this out again. There's enough wire there that I'm going to be able to cut it here and splice my neutrals together and just miss that damaged part altogether. So, got my 2 wires fed into this box. I reached in and straightened out the insulation, made sure it's all good. No holes in it. And my box is in place. Now I just need to tighten these 2 screws and make these splices. And that box is clamped in there nice and tight. All right, just a quick rundown of the splices I made here. This is our source. So we had a neutral coming in before. We had a hot and neutral going out to the lights in here, and ground, of course. So what I've done is I've spliced in my ground wire to the grounds along with the pigtail to the switch as it was. And then I had to cut the wire that was going right to the switch, and I had to splice all 3 now, the incoming hot and the outgoing hot now over to here. I had to splice them together along with the pigtail and then a jumper, the pigtail up to feed the switch. So this is going out to the other lights. That's a black wire. All these ones that are kind of white that I've spliced to blacks are actually black conductors. They just got some paint on them. So incoming hot, outgoing hot, spliced together along with the pigtail to the switch, the existing switch, that one out to the lights, neutrals all together. So now with my new feed, we've got neutral coming in, neutral going out to the cabinet lights, grounds of course, pigtail down to the switch, and then we've just got 1 wire, the switch leg going out to the cabinet lights on 1 terminal of the single pole switch, and you can see the pigtail from the ground and going to the ground terminal, and then the other terminal is the power in. So 1 on power in, 1 on out to the cabinet lighting on the 2 terminals of your single pole switch, grounded if it's needed. So then we have to just tuck all these wires back into the box, mount the device, and put the plates on. So there you have it. Switches are installed, plates back in place. This is for the existing kitchen lights, and this one will be for our new cabinet lights. Let's get into the actual install of the hardwired cabinet lights from Getinlight. All right, so time to get to the install of the actual fixtures. So here's that wire coming out of the wall. And as I mentioned, I'm gonna go right into the side of a wire mold box here. And then I'm gonna come right out of the other side of that box in center and right into the fixture, the first fixture. And then from here on, I'll go out with the wire mold channel over to the other 18-inch fixture. And in the middle here, we're going to have to go up between the cabinets to go to the other side. But I'll show you that. I'm just going to get this all put in place, and we'll show you how it looks after I've got this all mounted and in place and carrying on with the channel. So here's just a handheld shot of that box, that wire mold box. You see I've got the fixture mounted here now. I've got the wires from the fixture coming right out of the cable connector and out of the knockout provided right in the center of the fixture. And I'm using the wires from the fixture just to save myself a splice. So I insulated them with a piece of the Romex jacket as they go through the connector. And when I snap my cover on, it's going to cover both those wires, so there'll actually be no Romex exposed, no fixture wiring exposed whatsoever. So to get that fixture in place now, this is my base as to where the under-counter lighting is going to be away from the back wall, because it just fits now to make my cover fit, and the wireway will head out in one direction to feed the other fixtures. And then you have to just get that fixture held up in place and mark the keyhole slots. And I'll just come over and show you the keyhole slots. I started with 1, got it basically in place, started with 1, and then I measured out from the wall just to make sure it was even on both sides. And I got, zoom in on that without it focusing. Focus. Got the other one in place there. It's not wanting to focus on that. But as you can see, the keyhole slots, there we go, back in focus. Keyhole slots to get that fixture in place. And we'll show you what happens next. All right, so just before we carry on with the finishing of the mounting of the fixtures and the hard wiring, I'm just going to show you how you use the cords to connect these fixtures. if you want to just plug them in and use the switch to turn them off and on. If you notice on the end of each fixture there's a little door, and I'll give you a close-up of that. One says input, one says output. So you've got to make sure you're on the input side when you're going to plug in the cord to plug into a wall outlet. So little bitty screw here, just going to use a driver bit to undo that. I've already undone the one on this fixture. So it's as simple as plugging in the cord and plug assembly. And then on the other side is the output access, and then again input on the second fixture. So if you're going to link more than one together, you use the far end of the output, you plug the appropriate cord end, the jumper cable into it, and then again output to input of the second fixture in your string. So if these were all laid out under the cabinet, and you plugged them into the wall, you could turn either of them on, and you'd have to just control them with the switch. And here's that color rendering, but we'll get into that when I've finished the installation. We'll set them all up to the same color. Now, of course, when you use the cords, there's nothing wrong with it, but then you end up with trying to hide the cords like this and making that look nice. Let me just show you that on the wall. So how do you hide that? That's why I much prefer hardwiring the fixtures, because otherwise you're trying to bundle this up and using a twist tie, and then I guess you could use some cord cover assemblies that you can buy to hide cords, but like I said, I much prefer the hardwired method, so let's carry on. So I'll just show you one of the fixtures then on how you hardwire, how you bring the wire into the fixture. You can use any of these knockouts. They're a little more difficult to get the wire through to them. However, it's best to use this one. You loosen this screw, and now this whole plate comes off, and there's two knockouts in it. So you put in your wire connector, 2-screw wire connector, strip your cable. So I'm going to just show you how to strip that quick. Let's see, there's the PVC jacket, and there's paper inside of that. Paper wrapping around the ground wire. You just tear that off. So you bring your cable in. Now, I'm just going to make sure I orient this the proper way so the wire's coming out the way I want it to, which will be that way. So bring your wires in through the cable connector. Okay, so I've gone through the connector, through the cable connector. I'm just going to strip them now. All these things are provided with the fixtures, that cable connector, that 2-screw cable connector here. They're fitted with Waco wire levers, lever nuts in here. So easiest to do this when it's all opened up and before you mount the fixture, otherwise you're kind of laying on the counter trying to do it. I always start with my ground wire. So you see, you open up the little lever door. Push your ground wire in alongside the fixture wire that's already installed. Snap down your lever. That's the ground. Hard to work and let you see without my hands being in the way, but here's the neutral. They've used the center one, so we open up either side, wouldn't matter. Shove your wire in, snap down the lever, tug test, make sure it's good. And lastly, the the hot. I always like to start ground, neutral, and then hot when connecting things. And when I disconnect things, I start with the hot, the neutral, and end up with the ground. So again, open up one of the levers of the lever nut, snap it down, tug test, All is well, so now we want to just shove all these back in carefully into the fixture. Give them a little pre-bend. A little tough working with number 12, getting them all in there without anything pinching. You hook in one edge of this little access door, line up your screw hole. It's a keyhole slot, but I do not believe that the head of this screw would go through the wide part of the keyhole. So you just finish off by installing this tiny little screw. That would be much better if you didn't have chubby little hands. There you go. Now we're ready to mount that fixture and tie the wire into our junction box. All right, I'm going to give you a little handheld camera tour of what I've done underneath the cabinet. So there's junction box number 1. You see the wire at the bottom of your screen goes into the wall down to the new switch we installed right here. Now then we go right out of that junction box into the back of fixture number 1 and then through the wireway, which I haven't closed up yet, over to fixture number 2. So here's junction box number 2 right at the end of this cabinet section, and you can see there's a nice gap that's about 3/8 of an inch wide between the cabinets. Of course it's faced off at the front, and at the back it doesn't matter because that's against the wall. So I use that space to go from this junction box up through that space in the cabinets to the top of the cabinets to get over top of the range and the microwave range hood combination. So I'll show you that up there, what I've done with wireway as well, wire mold, trade name. So here you got wire in coming from fixture 1, wire out going up and over the cabinets, and a third wire in this junction box heads through the opening in that cabinet into some wireway and over to fixture number 2. Now here I'm going to put a 90-degree corner on this wire mold, and that's going to give us our protection for that NMD wire. So now on the other side of the range, I've got my wire coming down between these two cabinet sections again from above. One cable going into that junction box. Another cable coming out of that junction box over to what we'll call fixture number 3. And again, I'm going to be finishing that off with a 90 degree, flat 90 to cover that NMD cable. And then a third cable leaving this junction box going over to the 4th and final fixture, which is also a junction box. And then coming right out of that junction box, we'll move over there into that junction box and right into the back of the fixture number 4. So before I close up all these wireways, I'll take you on top of the cabinets and show you what I did there. Before I close them all up though and put the covers on, we're going to do a test just to make sure we don't have any problems, make sure all the fixtures are working, and then we'll close it up. All right, so here's coming up between those cabinets from the second junction box, I should say. Coming up between the two cabinets, and then I used an outside corner there and into a wireway, into my wire mold, all the way across to the other side. And that again, that NMD cable is protected against any mechanical damage. Should be good. We'll go over to the other side, show you where it goes down. Following along the top of the cabinets right against the wall so I could screw it down to the top of the cabinet. Had to make one splice here because it was over 5 feet, so I cut it back and made my splice right on a joint here so I could get a screw in on either side. And then they have a joiner piece for this wire mold to keep everything together to make that join. And now moving over, again an outside 90-degree corner and down through the cabinet. I think you can see my wire there. Just a little side note here on using wireway. When you're using it to protect NMD cable, some inspectors, while it's inside the wireway, if you were using wire mold like this, or perhaps you're using EMT conduit to protect it, or PVC, some inspectors will ask you to actually strip the NMD jacket off it while it's running in that wireway. It's an issue of heat buildup. You're just actually giving it 2 layers of protection, the NMD coating, the PVC jacket, as well as the protection or the enclosure of a conduit or this wireway. But if worst come to worst and the inspector asked me to strip that cable inside there, I would just pull those covers off and do so. But not likely that someone's going to be that particular. So here's that outside 90 again going down between the cabinets. All right, like I said, before we close up and close up all those wireways, let's just make sure all 4 fixtures came on. We'll just scan across there and make sure they're all on. All right, all good. Time to close up those wireways, clean up this mess. So here's the trim ring for those wire mold boxes. I was unable to find just an empty box that you could put a blank cover on, so I had to buy receptacles with them as a unit and then buy blank covers for them. But as you see, you just pry out the openings you need all around the edges. That's going to be for the wireway, and that's how there's little knockouts. So you just tear those pieces that you need out with the plier, and then the box just snaps on to the base plate. All right, I'll show you how those wireways all came together with the junction boxes back on. But just to show you the whole scene here now, lighting off, under cabinet lighting off, and with it on. And I'll even add the range hood light. So here I am giving you an upward shot from the countertop looking up. Fixtures are all installed, covers are in place, boxes installed, and all the wireway covers are put on. So let's just follow it down here. That's the main junction box, power coming in and going out to fixture number 1. And then over here, the second junction box where we come out of that over to fixture number 2 and up through the cabinets to fixture 3 and 4. And then you see here I used a 90-degree connector, flat 90, to cover the wireway and cover that NMD cable going into fixture number 2. Now over on the other side, we got the wire coming down between the cabinets again, and I showed you up top where the wireway concealed the NMD cable on the top of the cabinets. Comes down into this junction box, and a wire goes out again to feed this fixture. And it's got a junction box and then the wire going right back into the fixture to feed it. That's fixture 4. And then out of this junction box, we come out with wireway again and another 90 into the fixture, which would be called number 3, I guess. So there you have it, a complete installation of the under cabinet lightings from Getinlight. And that's the Pro LED under cabinet fixture featuring swivel design, 3 color temperatures, 2700, 3000, and 4000 Kelvin. I've got them set at 3000 here. Of course, these come with the option of plugging them in and linking them together if desired, or hardwiring as we did here. Now, if you, the best bet, of course, in a hardwire project is that the wires are already in the wall prior to completing construction, but that's not always the case, and so you're faced with having to do what we did here and fish the wires around and do the best you can. I hope you liked the way I did it with the wire mold and the boxes and the junctions hiding all the NMD cabling. And that's just one of many ways. You just have to feel it out and see what works for you. So thanks again for watching. We'll leave links below in the description box so you can find out where you can get your fixtures from Getinlight. Thanks again for watching. I'm Terry Peterman, the Internet Electrician.